Good evening, everyone. My name is DJ Mercer, and I am the Descendant Coordinator for Justice for Greenwood. And I would like to welcome you all to our recap of the case for reparations. And we have an amazing panel today, including Kate Ritchie, Chief Ngwale Amusan, as well as Dr. Tiffany Crutcher. But before we get into that, make sure that we have three action items. I want to make sure that you know about our three action items. The first one is donate to Justice for Greenwood at justiceforgreenwood.org. Follow us on all of our social media channels. That's Facebook and Instagram, as well as visit our website. And if you are a descendant, make sure you reach out to us via our descendant hotline or fill out the form on our website at justiceforgreenwood.org. So without further ado, I would like to bring on the founder and executive director of Justice for Greenwood, attorney Demario Solomon-Simmons, and he's going to give you all a little bit of a legal update on to how the legal process went.
Yeah, I appreciate it, DJ. It's always good to see you. I appreciate everyone that's joining in with us tonight. If you're looking at this and you believe in Justice for Greenwood, go ahead and hashtag that right now, Justice for Greenwood. I'm really excited about this panel of individuals who were actually inside of the courtrooms. These are non-lawyers who had an opportunity to listen to the arguments that we made. And these arguments we're talking about at the historic hearing that we had on September 28th. It was the very first hearing ever in Tulsa County regarding the Tulsa Race Massacre and its continuing harm. And I'm really, really proud of our legal team. Go to the next slide. Of our legal team who showed up and worked so hard to put together a fantastic case, a powerful case. We actually had almost 6 hours of argument. That is an extremely long time to argue a motion to dismiss. But you know who I'm really more proud of, in addition to the legal team, in addition to the Justice for Greenwood staff, is the three living survivors. I'm talking about Viola Fletcher, 107 years old, Mother Viola Fletcher, excuse me. I'm talking about Mother Leslie Benefield Randall, 106, who will be 107 on November 10th. So mark your calendars for that. And then obviously our guy, Uncle Red Hughes Van Ellis, who will be 100. I mean, he's 100 plus. They came to the hearing. They stayed the entire time. I think we were all inspired by their stamina to fight for themselves and for Justice for Greenwood. And it really helped us move forward with our case. If we go to the next slide. Basically, what we were able to present in court to our judge is that the defendants, the perpetrators, the criminals who destroyed Greenwood created a public nuisance, and the nuisance is ongoing. That was what we were talking about. That was the focus of the hearing, and that's what we believe we have shown. Now, with a motion to dismiss, all we have to show is make these allegations that this actually occurred, and we asking the court to give us the opportunity to move forward, to get discovery, so we can prove the allegations that we have made. Next slide. To be clear, so everyone understands, a public nuisance, this is the statute. So if you ever want to look at it yourself, statute is another word for law, 50 OS Section 1. A nuisance consists in unlawfully doing an act or omitting to perform a duty that either annoys, injures, or endangers the comfort, health, safety of others. I'm not going to read the whole statute. You see it right here. But if you believe that a public nuisance was created when the criminals, the defendants, destroyed Greenwood, when they arrested our people, when they killed our people, when they put us in concentration camps and made us work for free with badges on our chest, when they wouldn't allow us to rebuild, when they wouldn't pave the roads in Greenwood, when they wouldn't provide proper services to Greenwood, when they created urban renewal specifically in Tulsa to go through the Black communities to destroy Greenwood and continue to take our land to this very day. If you believe that that is a nuisance that continues today, just put Justice for Greenwood in your comment section. Justice for Greenwood in your comment section. This is what we're talking about when we're talking about a public nuisance. This is a law that has been used here in Oklahoma for over 100 years. It is a law that the defendants, the city and the state of Oklahoma themselves, are utilizing to this very day for opioid litigation. Next slide. What's really important about the public nuisance law and why I'm so excited about our opportunity. Obviously, I'm not the judge. We don't know what she's going to decide. But I feel very good about our position because the law, we believe, is very, very clear. And when a nuisance is ongoing, meaning it's still happening, meaning it's still causing a problem, meaning it's still causing an impact, a negative impact, that nuisance does not have a statute of limitation. In other words, we can bring this lawsuit because the nuisance is ongoing. This is well understood in Oklahoma. It specifically is in the law itself. It's at 50 OS number 7, but it's also in one of the oldest cases regarding a public nuisance, which this case we talked about in the court, which was decided 110 years ago in 1911, the Rev. B. Hunt case. I'm not going to get into the weeds. I just want you all to know there's no statute of limitation if the nuisance is ongoing. Next slide. We were able to show in our petition, in our documents, and also during our presentation, a timeline of showing all the ways that the nuisance, when it started and how it continues. Obviously, we know before the massacre, Greenwood was the Black Wall Street of America. It had the largest Black-owned hotel in America. It had the #1 place to go and have entertainment in America with the Williams Dreamland Theater. It had the top first African-American newspaper with a national circulation and a Tulsa Star. We had the most prominent, well-known Black doctor in the nation with Dr. A.C. Jackson. People were living in their homes. People were enjoying themselves before the massacre. Then the massacre happens on May 31st. That created the nuisance. And then the nuisance created through the 20s, through the 30s, through the 40s, through the 50s, through the 60s. Next slide. We also were able to show through the 60s and the 70s and the 80s and the 90s and to today that the nuisance is ongoing. So that is our argument. If the nuisance is ongoing, then there is no statute of limitation. We should be able to move forward. If you believe that the nuisance is ongoing, that was started first in 1921, but has continued each year since then, 100 years of continued harm, hashtag justice for Greenwood, hashtag justice for Greenwood. Next slide. Oh, I think I'm out of slides because that's not my slide. I think that's DJ's slide. So I'm just going to say this and let DJ take this back over. We don't know when our judge will actually make a determination. We had 6 hours of argument. There's been hundreds and hundreds of pages of documents provided to the court. We feel good about our arguments. We feel good about the performance that we had. We feel good that we should be able to move forward for the first time in history. And we're just going to wait for the judge to make her decision. And as soon as we get that decision, we will let you know what our next steps are. So DJ, I'm going to let you take it from there, buddy. I appreciate you.
Got you. Right back at you. So thanks, Demario, for that excellent legal update, giving a real brief idea about the legal proceedings. So I would like to bring on 3 panelists who were actually in the courtroom the day of the hearing. So I'd like to bring up Dr. Tiffany Crutcher, the amazing Dr. Tiffany Crutcher, Chief Nguwale Amusan, as well as Kate Ritchie. Thank you all for coming today and just being, in general, great human beings, but also partners in this fight for justice. So thanks for coming today.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
So the first question I have for you, and Chief, we got to do it like chivalrous, ladies first. So why did you feel it was important to be present for the hearing and be there in person?
Well, I guess I'll jump right in and thank you so much. And always to our amazing leader, Attorney Demario Solomon-Simmons. I cannot thank him enough for what he's done and continue to do for this community in Tulsa, the Black community, the survivors, descendants. We wouldn't be here without him. So I have to give him a shout out. Nevertheless, I thought that it was extremely important for us to be a part of something that's so much bigger than Tulsa. We believe that this case will set a precedence for reparations across this country. But not only that, we just commemorated the 100-year anniversary of the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre, and we saw people from all over the world, all over the country, media outlets, news outlets, people selling T-shirts, people having a good time. And then those cameras went away and things went back to homeostasis, went back to normal. And for me, as one of the lead organizers of the Black Wall Street Legacy Fest creating a platform so the world would know our story, being a descendant of a survivor, trying to right the wrong and educate our children. I felt that it was so much more than just commemorating, that the Black Wall Street Legacy Fest was a rally cry. It was our moment in time. It was our call to action. And all of the work, the journey that we've taken, that these survivors have taken, these survivors who's clawed through the worst times in U.S. history, through the Jim Crow era, through the Civil Rights era, through current day era, where we're still behind the eight ball because of systemic racism. For those three survivors to be able to sit in that courtroom and have their day in court, I felt was the most important thing. And I felt like that courtroom should have been packed out. But I called Attorney Demario the morning of, really emotional, because it was historic. And I couldn't believe that we were finally getting our day in court to defend something that's so precious to us, something that was robbed from us, our livelihood, our visions, our dreams. And so I would not have missed it for anything in the world. And it was just truly an honor to be able to stand alongside and stand in solidarity with those three survivors.
Thank you for that, Dr. Crutcher. Go ahead, Kate.
Yeah, well, I felt that it was a big day. What Dr. Crutcher just said, and as Demario referenced, the historic nature of the hearing, I think it's unconscionable that the region, the district, no court has held a formal hearing on reparations for, and just an airing of formally what happened that day, and the perpetrators having to stand up and account for themselves, account for the truth of the history that everyone here knows, and is working really, really hard to make sure is known more worldwide. I think that it was an important day for human rights and the human rights of Black folks in Tulsa and Black Tulsans. And I also, as Dr. Crutcher just said, the cameras went away, and part of me wanted to be there with my body to represent, that the powers that be in Tulsa, the defendants, the court, the infrastructure, that, I wanted to make sure they knew that there was a large community of people behind what the survivors are asking the court for and asking the community for, and that they needed to hear that demand, receive it, give it more than a fair hearing, give it the hearing that victims of a genocide deserve in a so-called free democratic country. So I really felt like it was important to be there and make sure that that was offered to this community, these survivors, and to this case, and do whatever I could if it wasn't, and make sure that folks that showed up, the whole community, the survivors, weren't further traumatized by being shut out again. And I'm glad that they got the hearing that they did, and we'll talk about that tonight. I'm excited to hear your feedback and what everyone has to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Go ahead, Chief.
Yeah, I mean, what else? What else would I do? What options do we have? Like, how can we carry the banner of Greenwood? How can we even talk Greenwood, talk Black Wall Street, but not show up on the streets when it's time to get justice? How could I not stand with those three survivors and show them solidarity, right? Show them that we're unified and that we're backing them. How could we not be there to, when they have to face the kind of ridiculousness you all witnessed in that courtroom, that the nature, the inhumanity? How could we not stand with them, right? When you're faced, you're standing in the face of oppression. You're standing in the face of insult and more injury and more trauma. That's when you want to be surrounded by family and friends and people who say, I'm about Greenwood, I'm about justice, I'm all about Black Wall Street. How do we show that? We show that by being representative, right? Like, if you have this expectation that we already know that Tulsa, it took Tulsa 3 days to even talk about the story, right? The rest of the world is talking about it, but it took Tulsa 3 days. We have to be present. We have to show up. we have to, we have to let these survivors and the descendants in this community know that this fight for justice is not about individual plaintiffs. This is about a unified effort. This is about the whole entire community, the whole district, right? And so, there weren't really any options in that.
Yeah, absolutely. And as descendant coordinator, Dr. Crutcher and Chief, you all are descendants. So also, I see some descendants in the chat. Teddy Williams, descendant. Africa Shaw, I see you. Pamela Vinson. Descendants are why we do this work. And without you all, without your ancestors, this is really why we are doing this work. And just taking it back to the actual courtroom, something I really thought it was important to highlight is that the room that we were originally supposed to be in was very small, and it became evident very quickly that this room was not going to accommodate all of the people who wanted to see this case. So really quickly, 1 minute each, talk about why you think it was important for just really to show that there's a group of people that they tried to put in this little room, but now we had to get in a bigger room. Talk about why it was important to show that we be there en masse as a group to show up. Dr. Crutcher.
Yeah, I always think that it's important for community to show up because it definitely shows that this is an issue that we care about, and to have to pause and change into a bigger courtroom was just amazing for me. And so the people who were there, they needed to be there, and just watching those survivors be rolled in that courtroom. I mean, I get emotional thinking about it, but I have to say this. I have to say that there were people that didn't show up, who should have been there, people who's been profiting off of Greenwood, people who's been representing Greenwood, people who pretended that they cared about Greenwood and cared about the survivors during the ceremony, people who cared about mass graves, but not one of those people showed up to the most important time for these survivors that they say they care about so much. And I made a vow that I would continue to fight and expose individuals who are exploiting the legacies and the histories of our ancestors, of the survivors, of the descendants. And we're going to keep exposing that. If you want to represent Greenwood, be about Greenwood, show up and show these survivors that you really, really care. But we see what's happening on the south side of the railroad tracks. We see the museums and the memorials and the T-shirts being sold, and not one dime going into North Tulsa, the area that was destroyed. And so we need to make sure that everyone who really cares about justice, that they're about justice, and that we continue to call out what this is: exploitation of a community of people who has been robbed of their generational wealth, and we're still fighting. We will not be gaslit. We will not go away, and we will not stand down. And so I just want to make sure that when we go to court, because we believe that, and I'm confident that we will proceed, we want to see the community and everybody that says that they care about Greenwood, everybody that's making money off of Greenwood. We want to see you in that courtroom.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Crutcher. Kate or Chief, anything else you would like to add to that?
Okay.
Go ahead, Chief. I mean, I do have something to add, but please go first.
Legal relief. Equitable relief. That's what we're here for. Equitable relief, abatement. I think it's important that the public understands that this is a public nuisance lawsuit, not a private individual lawsuit, right? Regardless of the names that you see on the lawsuit, this is for the public at large, because our collective community suffers, not just the people whose names you see on the document. This is about the collective suffering of the collective community. Our survivors and descendants have suffered immensely and still suffered. Going into that courtroom, there was suffering. I mean, serious suffering, because you don't know. You have to know what these people were told. You don't have any special injury. There's nothing special about you. Nobody in this room has any direct injury relating to 1921, eminent domain, urban renewal, any of those things, right? So this is what we're talking about here. Shout out to you, DJ, for working relentlessly to collect the names and info of as many descendants who deserve remedy and restoration. People need to understand there's a reason Mr. Mercer is doing this work. He's not doing it for the names that are listed on the document. He's saying literally we have to document and get every member, every family member, every person who has ever been a victim of this trauma and this suffering, whether it's mentally, financially, by land loss, whatever your loss is. That's what we're talking about. How do you get equitable justice, right? And that's really what that's the objective we have here. Equitable justice. What does that even look like? What does that mean? What does it mean to have an abatement, right? And I encourage people to look these definitions up so that you have some greater clarity about what this lawsuit really represents. Because I'm telling you now, whether you join us at Justice for Greenwood or you do your own lawsuit, what you're going to be faced with is the same thing that they said in court. There is nobody, including AME Church, that has any special injury, and that's a mute issue, right? You don't. How do you justify it? This is the language that the city and the county and all of these other institutions are telling us, is that you have not suffered. Mother Randall herself, they said Mother Randall didn't lose her house. Her parents did. What kind of, y'all gonna make me cuss on a live. What kind of BS is that, right? Like, are you serious? Are you effing serious? Like, we really have to know what we up against when we deal with these entities, because it's a reason they got away with this for 100+ years, right? You don't get away with murder by doing the right thing. They're still doing the wrong thing. They still have cognitive dissonance. They're still trying to make it look like we are the perpetrators and not the victims.
They're still saying things like, sorry, Chief, you don't mind if I jump in?
No, please do.
It made me very angry, and I think we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But you asked why we needed to be there, what effect it had that they had to move us to a bigger courtroom because so many people showed up. There's an energy to having people there, and the dynamics of racial violence are about visibility and invisibility, and taking up space and taking space away from another. And I think that the judge, the media, that the people that were there observing, they did have to stand up and take notice. They did have to directly address a community. It makes a difference when you show up. And as Dr. Carter said, there are a lot of people who show up to a party who will want to profit off of a brand or a movement, and not just monetarily, but use social capital by representing. But it's important to actually show up in times like this. And there's such a great core community of folks here that did, and we're going to keep rallying. And I know Dr. Carter is going to keep rallying to get everybody there. Everybody, because that is what it's going to take. And it's our responsibility. It's the responsibility of folks who have the privilege or the profit, who stand in a space that is on the backs of so much suffering and so much violence. So many of those defendants, so many of those statements by those lawyers, so many of those people, even the judge and the people who work there at the courthouse, in their family background and their history, if they look a little bit backwards, so many of them have a story to tell, and they're in a certain place for a certain reason too, and they need to be honest about that. And that conversation is only going to be forced when everybody shows up, and we're going to keep doing that.
Oh, very good points by each and every one of you. We're going to shift gears a little bit. So Chad, could you bring up the slide? And this is what we are up against. So on January 17th, the mayor of the city of Tulsa, G.T. Bynum, stated, in Tulsa, the racial and economic disparities that still exist today can be traced to the 1921 Race Massacre. But the city of Tulsa is actively working to dismiss the case. And Chief used a beautiful phrase called cognitive dissonance, right? How can the city say that everything today is directly traced to 1921, but then still want to not remedy those? That's to me, it just doesn't make sense. It's a argument that's countering itself. So Chief, since you talked about cognitive dissonance and we have a few minutes left, talk about that. How can the city basically counteract itself? That doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, well, it's these are the games that they play. It's real simple, right? Just define what we're asking for. Define a nuisance, right? We don't have to play games here. Let's just pull up Webster's dictionary, whatever you want to use, right? What is a nuisance, right? And just saying, if they just define that, this is not a tort claim. This is a nuisance claim, right? And we're saying a nuisance is an inconvenience. It's annoying. It's vexatious. It's an interference that causes damage, annoyance. It's an injury, a painful feeling, a displeasure, a grief, right? So when you tell, in one breath, you're saying Mother Randall there's no, you didn't suffer any damages, right? Your parents did. You even got John Tucker, the attorney, who says a wrong to the ancestors is not a wrong to the descendants, right? This is the language that we're talking about here. Like, that's cognitive dissonance, right? You really are separated from the two. You're creating this illusion, this grand illusion that you want people to believe in. And you look into the camera and there's this hypnosis that's taking place that says, where they're trying to convince us that this is our fault, that there is nothing to be paid, right? This is a matter of justice, and they have enriched themselves so much off of this event, this tragic event, even to the point that the arrogance, right? The arrogance to just say what you said in the presence of these survivors who experienced this crime. That would be like me telling Jewish Holocaust victims or Japanese, hey, what are you talking about? That's no big deal. There's nothing special about what happened to you. There are other people who've been massacred in history. There are other people who have experienced these crimes in history. That's exactly what that's exactly how the city, the county, and these other entities feel about Black people and the suffering that they created in this city. We didn't create these conditions. They have created these conditions concurrently. So there's no past, there's only the present. And this is a long stream of criminal activity that's been conducted by these entities, and we have to get justice now, right? These survivors are asking for justice. What is the next generation going to ask for if we don't get it now? They're going to ask for revenge.
And if I could just jump in and piggyback off of Chief and talk about the trauma. The trauma is pervasive. I mean, yeah, we suffered trauma in Mother Randall, Mother Fletcher, Uncle Red back in 1921, but they also suffered it on that very day in court, having to relive, having to even listen at the city, the same city that ruined their community, tell them that they didn't suffer any harm or that they didn't suffer a special injury. How cruel can you be? And they killed us with guns, with weapons, and now they're continuing to kill us with policy and with policy violence. I mean, think about blight and eminent domain, where they are snatching up our land to redevelop for themselves. Think about the police brutality. Think about the school to prison pipelines that are on the north side of the tracks. Look at the wealth gap. I mean, I can go on and on and on. This isn't rocket science. All you have to do is come to Tulsa, open up your eyes, and see that we live in a tale of two cities. But for them to say that, well, racial disparities exist within all ethnic groups, how cruel and how insulting and how infuriating. And this was the defenses. This is what they argued. And they use the same, we're using the public nuisance claim, the same claim that they use, the city and state against Johnson & Johnson with the opioid crisis. They won. And so now when a Black lawyer and Black plaintiffs use the same exact claim, it doesn't work for us. That's what we're dealing with here in Tulsa, Oklahoma, the same city that burned down Greenwood, that took our land, that didn't let us file our insurance claims. It's the same city that is telling us this did not happen and that we don't have a claim and that these three survivors did not suffer any injury.
That's right. That's right. I want to say one more thing. This is my last statement. The city is afraid of reconciliation. That needs to be documented and written. The city is afraid of reconciliation and restoration and restitution, but reconciliation, right? Because the city claims to be about reconciliation, but what is reconciliation? Reconciliation includes victims' compensation funds. It includes audit of land records. It includes land trust. It includes mental health programs. It includes abatement of taxes, scholarship programs. declaration of liability and abatement, trauma centers, injunctions against financial enrichment. That's what they're afraid of. That's reconciliation.
Afraid of it's greed, and it's just privilege and violence. The racial wealth gap exists in that one statement. The Tulsa Regional Chamber's attorney, the spokesperson for the business community in Tulsa, that comment he made in court. It wasn't her house, it was her parents' house.
That's right.
That's the racial wealth gap. How many of those attorneys, how many of those lawyers standing there on the defense table are gonna tell their parents when they inherited their home or when they pass it on to their children, that's not yours?
That's right.
It is absolutely how the wealth gap was created and maintained, and a fundamental denial of the human rights and the even opportunity for any financial security of Black citizens of Tulsa, and an apartheid regime that they want to continue to enforce. And we've got to stop them. They're not going to get away with it. And I'm really proud of everybody, the descendants here speaking their truths, continuing to show up. You show up and show up and show up and speak truth. And it's got to take a lot out of you. And I am humbled and here for anything you all ever need, or, the community needs. And we've got to keep showing up in the courtroom or wherever else the legal team or you all ask us to show up.
Thank you all for coming today. Any last things, any last feelings, thoughts when you were in the courtroom that you would just like to say, or you would want people who weren't in the courtroom to know? Anything else that you noticed, anything you thought, anything you felt from those of us and you who were in the courtroom that you would like to tell them today?
I'll just jump in and say I thought that the judge was fair and that she was that she treated the survivors with care and concern and made sure that they were okay. And so I thought that was really a good sign. I've been in these courtrooms in Tulsa and in Oklahoma, and sometimes you don't get that, at least that intentionality to make sure that those plaintiffs are okay. But I will say that I want to, for everyone that's listening here, everyone out there in the community, that this is a real-time fight. I mean, we're not just doing this. This isn't a hobby. This is our livelihood that we are fighting for. This is so important. And there's three types of people. You have that one person who may be on this line that just tuned in, that's just learning about this lawsuit, trying to figure out how to get involved. Get involved. Get with DJ Mercer. Let him know. We will get you into the fold and get you up to speed. And then you have person number two. You may be that person that's saying this isn't going to work. It's not going to happen. I'm going to do my own thing. We're okay. But please, please, please don't try to, stop this from happening. Just try to do your own thing. We're going to support you. And then you have person number three. And that third person, you're the type of person who truly believes. You believe that we will win. You believe that we will get justice. And you're that type of person that will take action. You're going to support this fight. You're going to share on your social media platforms. You're going to hashtag Justice for Greenwood. You're going to show up time and time again. And those are the people that we're looking for. But we welcome every single person, every single supporter. Just know that this is for the nation. This is for Blacks in America. If we win in Tulsa, we will win everywhere. So again, thank you so much, DJ, and it's been an honor serving alongside Kate and Chief.
Kate and Chief, anything you would like to say?
I'm good.
I just want to say to the survivors, and if they're listening, I just want them to know that we love them, right, to our core. We truly love them. Like, this is an act of love. It's not an act of anything else but that. When people say, why do you still do this? My grandfather was in a 2003 lawsuit. We've seen what disappointment looks like. Teddy Williams, Wes Young, and all these other people who are on this call. We know what disappointment looks like by the system, and here we are again. So I want people to know this is an act of love. This is why we do it. No other reason, but because we love our people, we love our community, and we need to reinforce that love by allowing people to know that we do freaking matter.
Excellent words, Chief. And with that, I want to thank each one of you, the panelists, for coming today. Not even just coming today, but also being there in the courtroom, keeping your presence there. Because sometimes when it pertains to Black issues related to Tulsa, specifically North Tulsa, the main part is just being in the room, letting people know that we care about North Tulsa, we care about Greenwood, and each one of you was there. And I thank you for that. And thank you for coming today. And I know the ancestors are looking at us and looking at you
Yes,
all
sir.
and are really proud. So thank you as we adjourn today.
Yes, sir.
Thanks, DJ.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Chad, if you can bring up the last slide, and it will highlight why this is important, why the public nuisance started in 1921 and why it's important for us to continue to fight. 35% of Black Tulsans live in poverty. A third of Black Tulsans live in poverty in Tulsa. The median household income is $22,000 less than white Tulsans. The unemployment rate is double compared to white Tulsans. Only 34% of Black Tulsans own a home compared to 58% of white Tulsans. And these are alarming. Like, these are the reasons why in 1921, these are still happening today. The public nuisance is still happening. If the city did its job and protected and took care of all of its citizens, because last time I checked, North Tulsa still is Tulsa, these statistics would not be so alarming. Black Tulsans are 5 times more likely to be victims of officer use of force rather than other racial and ethnic groups. 5 times more likely. In conjunction with that, Black adults are arrested twice as often as white adults. It's very frustrating for me as a person who lives and works in North Tulsa, who sees the beauty of North Tulsa, who sees and works with people from North Tulsa all the time. It's just disheartening because the city, it seems intentional that resources aren't coming to the north side of the tracks, like Dr. Crutcher said. And this is why we fight. For descendants, for the ancestors who passed away before justice was given, before repair was given. This is why we fight. Make sure, if you're listening to this call, please share with anyone you know who doesn't know about the Tulsa Race Massacre. Let them know about it. Tell them the story. Connect with us. Bring them to a meeting, to a town hall. We have a town hall coming up on the 28th of this month. Bring them to that meeting. People power is power. And that's what we're asking for, is to help and move forward. The more people, more eyes we have on this issue, because this is more than a Tulsa issue. This is just a microcosm of America. Make sure that no matter what you do moving forward, always do what's right. Bring people to our town halls. Tell people about the Tulsa Race Massacre. Tell people about Justice for Greenwood. Donate to Justice for Greenwood. Follow us on all of our social media channels, Facebook, Instagram. And if you are a descendant, or if you know of any descendants, make sure that you reach out to us via our website, justiceforgreenwood.org, and let us know that you're a descendant. Right now, if you're a descendant, hashtag I am a descendant, because we do this work for you. This is not about me. It's not about Demario. It's not about Justice for Greenwood. This is about the people and the lives who were changed not only in 1921, but also up until this day with the public nuisance and continuing harm. So with that, I have a phrase that I like to say that I learned from Demario. Justice for Greenwood, justice for Greenwood, justice for Greenwood. Thank you and have a good night.